for it to be wrong. When we look and give verification, we have to see that it holds a truth that one is examined. It does not fall to pieces under the microscope. He said that his brother would hate, that there was such hatred, that his brother hated him. And when we search it out, we see that Yahweh God, and I like to make it clear, that nobody said God himself would make a statement towards his brother Esau, because what is written in the book of Obadiah, and that's right after Amos, he says here, go down to verse 11 of Obadiah, verse 10. What does it say?
For thy balance against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever.
That's right. See, because he dealt with a perpetual hate for his brother. And it says here, his brother he did this to, not a stranger. He makes and deal with his brother viciously. That Yahweh God and Malachi, what does Yahweh God says to him in the book of Malachi? Malachi chapter 1, verse 2.
It says, I have loved you, saith Yahweh. Yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, said Yahweh? Yet I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness.
Yes, so he said, I hate Esau because of what Esau participated in. It was such violence against his own brother. He never let up. It said it was a perpetual. It says he in here. It mentions. It says, I will not turn away the punishment there, because he did pursue his brother with the sword. And he said he cast off all pity and did tear perpetually. And he kept his wrath forever. That's what he said. It wasn't a wrath that would end. It was a wrath forever, that he pursued his brother with such hatred, because the blessing was given to him by Yahweh God. And Yahweh God said, I hate him because of what? His action that he took towards his own brother. These things that when we begin to understand in the book of Obadiah, it goes on. It says, in that day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his force, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem. Ain't no man could have wrote this story so well without the intervention of the Spirit of Yahweh God, because all nations is in that land. Joel said so. Joel, in his writings in the verse, he says how they scattered, how the nations did what they did. and parted the land. Joel 3, chapter 2. He says the same thing. Could you read that?
I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land.
That's right. Joel even said what they did. What they did, they parted the land. They went in there. And everybody, so when you looking and finding the validity of the material, you can't do it if you have not read it and the Spirit has revealed the binding, giving you that binding understanding so that you can see the truth of the material and its validity, and that it is not false. That your identity and what is occurring to you in your life is right before your face. Why? Because in Deuteronomy chapter 28, Yahweh says here, verse 46, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 46.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever.
So it's upon, he said, his seed. So when you read, and what does it say here in the same chapter, verse 15?
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
That's right. So Yahweh God is talking about these curses. And he says in verse 46, and they shall be upon thee for a sign. These things that is happening to you in the United States of America is your sign. They ain't happening to everybody. Not the way that they said, such as it says here, verse 68 of that same chapter states what? And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So you will go into Egypt again. And where's Egypt? The geography of Egypt is on the continent of Africa. Even when they gave you the boundary lines, he says your land is from the river of Egypt unto the river of Euphrates. When we look at that, we see that where is it located? On the continent of Africa. So we can see by that description that these people origin is of African origin. And therefore, because we can understand that, we know that Yahweh God is dealing with a people that came from the continent of Africa. Let's go to Zechariah chapter 10, verse 10. And read this extraordinary. This is something extraordinary. It shows you how the balance. This could not have been written by man. It had to be written by Yahweh God, given to these prophets Because no man could have coordinated such a large amount of information to where it would make that much sense. What does it say? Zechariah chapter 10, verse 10.
I will bring them again also out of the land of Egypt.
What does it say? Will what? I will bring them again also out of the land of Egypt. Didn't it say we were going to Egypt again?
And gather them out of Assyria, and I will bring them into the land of Gilead and Lebanon, and place shall not be found for them.
So Yahweh God say that he is going to bring us again out of the land of Egypt. So where we are at is according to scripture and the name. We know that Egypt means a place of oppression. And weren't we sold here? There was nobody else sold as slaves in the United States of America other than us. No one. Yahweh God has said these things. So it has to make clear, it has to have clarity to you. So that you might know that you're not this walking down a dark way. And it's so dark that because you can't find it, you just continue to walk. You want to have some understanding of your direction and your terrain. And this Bible gives it to you. Because it told you you will be lost sheep. It told you even in the New Testament that the children of Israel would be lost sheep, that they would lose their way. This is a fact, and we have lost our way. And they told you who were the ones that encouraged you to be lost. That's right. It is so stated here with such clarity that because you don't know how to relate to it in its material content, you think it's talking about somebody else. It ain't talking about somebody else. It's talking about you. It can't be talking about the European white man that coming out of Europe that calling himself a Jew. That's impossible. It can't be talking about him. His geography is different. The circumstances that is prescribed in this book does not match him, not one bit. The only person it matches is you. It does not match him. It just doesn't. Yahweh God, where was he lost? Where was he scattered? He never went into no country on this earth and was sold as slaves with shackles and chains. He doesn't even meet that criteria. When you read the Torah, read the prophecy, read the material in this Bible, it doesn't match him. It's your sign so that you might begin to return to your God. It doesn't match him. Does that mean he cannot keep the law? Of course not. But he ain't no Jew. He ain't no Jew. To be a Jew or Israelite, that's by bloodline. We were savagely attacked by every nation that we went into. So it is up to Yahweh God to decide, because we were raped. And we have been dealt with so viciously, so subtly have they done things to us. But Yahweh God is going to put it all together. You understand what I'm saying? When we read this book, Yahweh God is not pleased how they have dealt with us in a subtle way. And Yahweh going to deal with them the way they have dealt with us. And that subtle misleading, crafty, ungodly, telling us to go this way and it's the wrong way, giving us the wrong advice. Yahweh God is displeased with how they've handled us, because it was unnecessary for that to occur. And therefore Yahweh God is going to deal with them the way they have dealt with us. You understand? He has not been right with us. He has given us misinformation of ourselves so that we could never. So these are the things that Yahweh God is saying to the heathens. He says here in Zechariah chapter 1 verse 15, and he states his displeasure. He says how displeased he is of how they dealt with us. What does it say?
I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. For I was but a little displeased, but they held forward the affliction.
That's right. They held forward the misery that we are suffering in America and all wherever we are. And Yahweh said here, therefore wait ye upon me, said Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them my indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. And Yahweh God goes on to say, in Zephaniah, that chapter 3, he says, and at that time will I bring you again, even in that time that I gather you, for I will make you a name and a praise among all people of the earth, when I turn back your captivity. Our captivity. These are the things that we have to understand. These words do not relate to nobody else but you. When did it say a Christian person or Episcopalian or any denomination went into captivity anywhere in the world? None. We were removed from our continent by such violence and hatred. And Yahweh know that they have come against us. And who will stand up? You must have a spiritual understanding of this literature before you say, Jacob never lived. You can't say, if you have to have, I couldn't go into any other book as a Quran or any other book. I don't know, because of reading it doesn't give you the substance. I've studied the Torah and the prophecy, and therefore I would not say to anyone or mislead them. This book that we call the Torah is a book of definites, circumstances that does not waver to the left nor to the right. This book is the absolute truth. Even if they say that Egypt is not in Africa, then where is the Jordan River? Where is the river they call the Red Sea? Where is Jerusalem? When we look at the other boundary lines that mark where these people came from, we look at the continent. If Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt, where were they before they went into Egypt? Was they in Europe or were they in Africa? So when we look and analyze it, we see our own reflection, because we definitely don't see theirs. We see our own. And therefore, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, Yahweh God says to them, starting at verse 1, what does it say?
And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whether Yahweh thy God have driven thee.
So how can we call these to mind unless we see a verification that it pertains to us? And Yahweh God, He cursed the children of Israel. And these curses happened to them. They were agricultural people. And they were attacked in the very agricultural that Yahweh gave them to sustain them. And therefore, when we look, He said, you have to call these to mind among the nations. In other words, you will see the verification that is yours. Because you evidently, if you calling it to mind, you had to forget it. So somebody had to show you your connection to it. And not one European white man can show me a connection that he has with that Torah. It doesn't mean that he cannot keep the law. It has nothing to do with that. That land that he's there is not his. That is not his land. He has gone into a land and he has shed innocent blood, and Yahweh God ain't pleased. Because it's said so clearly all the way, and this is the beautiful part about it. Because see, when we read, we seek to find truth. And sometimes you find truth in some funny places, and you go in there, and it's sitting there, and you say to yourself, my God, does the people see this? And some truths are not for everybody to see. And what truth was that? It's in St. Luke, chapter 21, verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and they shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden under of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That is deep. In other words, there's a time limit. And Jerusalem is being trampled underfoot to this day. And the true inhabitants fell by the sword and was dispersed into all nations of the earth. And Jerusalem is being trodden underfoot. This is not only, that is not the only statement that is made. Yahweh God makes it clear in other books, because it happens. When we search the other books, and that came out of St. Matthew's, and there are other books that tell you that Jerusalem shall be a burdensome stone unto anyone that burdens himself with them shall be cut off in pieces. And that land is in total trouble because they don't adhere to the prophecy, because they say somebody wrote it and it's not true. So they go on blindly, and they're being eaten up by the words that have proceeded out of the mouth of Yahweh God. And therefore, they don't take these things seriously. But we who have the prophecy and the knowledge, we know that that which has been written is that which shall happen. And as it says here, that is written in this book, that Jerusalem shall be trodden down. But in the overall it's going to cause a lot of trouble for a lot of people that would be foolish to set their hands to bother that land. In Zechariah chapter 12, verse 3, it tells you, we can start at verse 2 of Zechariah chapter 12, verse 3. We can start at 2. Start at 2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. And everybody, every time something happens, they're going to be cut in pieces. It's already been prophesied. You can't do nothing with it. So when somebody tell you that the Bible's a liar and these things ain't true, it's because you have to do not only in-depth study. If the Spirit of Yahweh God don't show you these things, you're not going to understand them. You're going to say, you have to understand, how does it relate to me? Me, because Yahweh dealt with a nation of people that he said, I've not dealt so with any other nation. He gave them a privilege that only he himself could give, and that is that he allowed them to have a personal relationship that he himself said, I've not dealt so with any other what? Nation. And he said, who was Yahweh's people? The children of Israel. So we know that this white man coming out of Europe, he is not. He never had a relationship with God. Never. And his vicious acts against his brother has maintained his distance from the living God, because he has been what? Vicious, unforgiving in his action. And therefore Yahweh God don't hear his prayers. That's why they call it the wailing wall. Because that's all they doing, is just wailing that wall with their words. They're not sincere. How can you ask Yahweh for something that ain't yours? It was never yours. Therefore, may Yahweh bless each and every one of us. And may the Spirit rest upon us. Yahweh Elohayama.
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 Yahweh Elohayama. L'Shabbata, Atniga, L'Quadwasha, Yahweh, Makabada, Yagadala, Yahweh, Yagadala, Allahayim, La'a, Ya'anaha, Latista Yukwa, Kaya, Shamasha, Magana, Yahweh, Allahayim, Khanaha, Malaka, Yahweh, Savayaba, Mayura, Yawa, Wayecha, Latisma, Berwaka, Allahayama, Ashura, La'a, Yesayura, Apaladaya, Wachasada, Mahataya, Yatisra, Samawaka, Latisra, Shalawama, Kaya, Baka, Bata, Waka, Bata, Kawa, Bayahawa, Ataya, Atta. Kaya, Bayaha, Yahweh, Tiswara, Apalayama. May Yahweh bless each and every one of us. Amen.